Hello there everyone and welcome to Altenew Academy. Today we are going to be playing with some of the fabulous new products in the Boho Chic release. So first up I have my stamp wheel and I just have that down on my work surface, and I am going to be working onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 panel of cardstock. Before I start, I am actually going to condition my stamps just using my stamp conditioning eraser. So you can see that I've just rubbed that over all of the stamps in the very pretty Wild Geranium stamp set. Once that's done, I'm going to take the base for the flower images and I'm just going to pop that into place onto my card panel and then lift that up with the lid of the stamp wheel. Once that's done, I am going to ink around the edges and some of the more of the left side edge, using some of the Dewdrops ink. And then I'm just going to kind of blend that out a little bit with the blending tool, so I don't have a harsh edge from the ink pad on the stamped image. Once that's done, I'm going to lift that one up and you can see just how beautiful that is there. And I'm going to do exactly the same on the other portion of the panel. So I've just lifted that up and turned it around so I can keep the stamp in the same position. I'm just going to ink up half of the stamp roughly and then blend out those edges with a small ink blending tool, and then we can stamp that down to create this very beautiful kind of look here. Once that has been done, I am going to ink this up again. This time I am going to be using the baby pink ink, and I'm just trying to add this where it hasn't been added with blue already. So I'm just kind of trying to fill in the gaps of the previous image that we've just stamped. Again, I will be using the small blending tool just to kind of soften those edges and blend them out a little bit. So once I have that done, you can see that we have that beautiful kind of blue color from the Dewdrops. We also have that beautiful pink color from the baby pink. And then we also have this really cool kind of purple color between the two colors that have blended together. I think this is such a whimsical kind of color look, and it is very, very pretty. Again, I am going to switch that panel around so I can ink the other one in exactly the same way. So I'm just going to try and add the ink onto the stamp where it hasn't been already. Soften that out a little bit with the ink blending tool and then stamp that down into place. I'm then going to remove the image that we've just used, and I am going to use the second part of the flower images. Now this is going to add in the details to the image that we have. So I'm just going to line that up directly on top of one of the stamped images, and that means I just need to do that once because we're just going to turn the paper rather than move the stamp. I'm going to do the same technique as before, but this time I'm going to use some darker ink. So this time I am going to be using fuchsia, and I'm just going to stamp that onto part of the image and then again diffuse that using the mini blending tool. Stamp that down into place. Once that's done, we can then use some of the Aqualicious in the parts that we didn't stamp. So this is kind of round the outside edge rather than the middle, which I did with the fuchsia. Again, I am going to blend that ink out so we don't have the harsh edge on there, and then stamp that into place too. Again, you can see that we have that same beautiful colorway with the blue, the pink, and the purple on all of the image there. Once that's done, we can switch that around and we're going to do exactly the same as before. So I'm just going to pop that into place. I am going to ink up with some of the fuchsia ink. This time I'm going to kind of concentrate more on the bottom part of that one. Diffuse the ink using a small blending tool and then stamp that image into place. Once that's done, we can lift the lid again, flip that around, and then this time we are going to be using that Aqualicious ink to add in the ink around the top part of the edges. I did forget to actually blend that out, but it turned out okay, so don't worry too much. Once that's done, we can add in the third layer for these flowers. Now there are two small little pieces on the stamp set that are just going to go into the kind of flower centers that we have, and I'm just going to pop those into position both at the same time and then pick that up with the stamp wheel lid or wheel. This time I'm going to be using some darker colours. So this is the Teal Cave. I did diffuse this out the first time, but then I didn't bother to do it the rest of the time. So it's completely up to you. So we've got that really dark purple colour on the flower centres. So that one was the Teal Cave, and this one here is the Magenta. So that's going to stamp directly over the one that we've just done. I can then twist that panel around, again not having to move the stamps that is on the wheel already, because we're going to stamp in the same place as before. And we will be using that Teal Cave ink, stamp that into position, and then we are going to use the Magenta as before. So once that has been done, I was then going to pop the leaves into position, but I decided to die cut it first so I can get these properly lined up. So I'm just going to be taking the coordinating die, and I am going to pop that into place around the stamped image. You can see there are places that haven't been stamped, and that's where we're going to pop our little leaves in a sec. I am going to use some of the satin masking tape just to pop that into position and keep it in place while I run that through. You can see that I've cut both of the pieces out, and what I've done is I've popped the negative space onto my stamp wheel, then pop the die cut in, and this is going to allow me to stamp both of the die cuts in the same place, so I won't have to move the stamps on the panel once I've picked it up. So I'm going to pop the leaves into position, then pick all of the leaves up at the same time, and this time I'm going to go with like a seashore color leaves. So this one here is the Volcano Lake ink, and I'm just going to pop that back into place and stamp those leaves down. Once that's done, I can remove the little die cut from the little placer, little hole, or the whole place, guide place. And then I'm just going to stamp the same color onto these leaves as well. So this is the Volcano Lake ink. So the leaves only have 2 layers. So I'm going to take the second layer of these, and this is going to be the detail kind of shadow point of these ones. And I'm just going to pop those into place onto the leaves that we've just stamped. So we have those 2 larger leaves and this kind of little stem over here too. Again, I'm going to pick that up with the lid of the stamp wheel. And this time around, I'm going to go for a really dark ink. So this one, I have the very pretty emerald ink. So I'm just going to ink those up and then stamp that into place. So we have that really dark kind of contrast then on the leaves. So once that has been done, we can then remove that little die cut from the placeholder and then add in the other one, so we don't have to move the stamps around on the little stamp wheel lid. I'm just going to pop that into place so it's nice and perfect. Again, I'm going to ink this up using the emerald ink to add that really dark shading there. Flip the wheel over and then stamp into place. So that is our really pretty little die cuts, all beautifully stamped now, and we don't have to die cut them because we already have that done. And you can see the beautiful kind of color blends that we have on there. I then have the Delicate Floral Motif hot foil plate, and I've just popped that into my hot foil machine and I have let that heat up. I then have some of the brass hot foil. I've popped that shiny side down, and then I have a panel of white cardstock, which is 4 1/4 and 5 1/2, and I've popped that right onto place where I want that hot foiling to be. Once I run that through my die cutting machine, you can just see how pretty that foiling is, but we do have a little bit of extra foiling over here that I don't want. So to get rid of that, all I'm going to do is I am going to take a sand eraser, make sure it's nice and clean, and then you can just kind of buff off or erase that extra foil that you don't want anywhere. It's really cool, and it means that you can kind of use this even though you thought that you maybe couldn't have. Once that's done, I am going to take the die cuts that we have created before, and I'm going to pop those into place over that little foiled strip that we have, detailed foil strip. I'm going to pop those into place to see where I want them to be, and then once I'm happy with the placement of these, I'm just going to use some of the Instant Dimension foam tape from Altenew, and I am going to pop those into place. I'm just using a large strip right on the back. You could definitely add more of this if you want to, but I don't feel that you need to add as much as you think that you might. Unless you are actually sending it through the post, then you want to make sure that everything's kind of equally spaced. Once that's done, we can then remove the overhang of all of the little pieces. I'm just using a small set of scissors, but you could use a larger one if you wanted to. I do find it's easier with a larger set of scissors just to go all the way across. I then didn't want to kind of waste these little pieces because we did spend some time creating these. So I'm just going to add those into place along the edges, just using the foam tape that was already on the pieces, and then get rid of any overhang that way as well. So that is our background. I then added that onto a piece of a card base. I then have a little piece of cardstock here. I've added some of the ultra sticky tape from Altenew, and I'm just going to take the foil waste that we had before, and I'm just going to add that on top of the double-sided adhesive that we have. And that's going to create a little piece of foiled cardstock, which is very, very clever. So if you have waste and you don't want to kind of use it for a whole piece, you can definitely use the scraps around the outside edge. I am just going to trim this down a little bit so I know where to add the double-sided adhesive to the back of it. So I'm just going to add some onto there. And this is going to be what we use to create our little sentiment. So I have the Hello from the Wild Geranium die set, and I'm just going to pop that into place. So this is the Hello sentiment. I also have the Hello shadow, and I am going to be cutting that out of just some white cardstock there. This doesn't have any adhesive on. I can then run that through my die cutting machine. I did use the metal shim just to make sure everything cut perfectly the first time. So I am going to remove these, and they did actually stick into the die. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the line locked pieces from the E and also the O. I find that using a little hat pin or a little needle works really well for this. Once that has been removed, I can take the shadow piece or the die to the shadow piece and just line those up with each other and then press them down so the adhesive sticks onto the shadow piece. This can actually stick the pieces together and then you can remove the die, but more often than not, I do find that you need to use a little pressure just through the little dots on the die just to kind of release the pieces that are stuck in there. So that's what I'm doing with my hat pin. I'm removing all of the little pieces onto the shadow piece, and then I can have my beautiful layered little sentiment here. Once that's done, all I need to do then is add a little bit of foam tape just behind the sentiment, and then I can pop it into place. I am going for a little center positioning on this one just to add that kind of cohesive look there. So once that has been stuck down, here is the card complete. I really do hope that you liked the card and that you've enjoyed the video as well. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it would be great if you do share. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.